Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's show. Now, many of you will remember earlier this year that we covered the world's largest telescope. And there's a city actually next to this telescope. It's a radio telescope in China. This is the world's largest radio telescope. And the city next to it looks a lot like a Disneyland-esque type of telescope, worship to the stars and all this stuff, right? And we decoded all this. If you don't remember that video, go back and take a look at it in reference to the show today. But here you see the FAST telescope, it's called, and this is in China. They called it China's eye to the sky. Right? Let me pull up the Wikipedia article on this, because this is pretty interesting what they're trying to do here with this telescope. Now, this is a very secretive telescope. You have to have special permissions. You're not allowed onto this telescope grounds. You have to observe this from a observing location. Of course, it's China, so we understand the secret nature of China. But here are some shots from this telescope, and this is a very enigmatic and mysterious telescope. Look at the spiral road beneath the telescope. We talked all about that and what that might mean, and talked about how these types of collection devices are collecting millimeter waves of some kind, and that it could be even transmitting them or collecting them. We are not sure. They're telling us that they're collecting them, and then they get a readout of what they're seeing come through the stars, right? But really, what is this really about? Because look at the center of the telescope. This spiral emerges. Now, this is a road, obviously, but you have to ask yourself, are there deeper meanings to this? And we got to that point because we saw some of these faces that emerged when we looked at the city next to this that was dedicated to China's eye in the sky. This is called the 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, known as FAST. Now, we're bringing this up today because this telescope has a sister telescope, and it's called the Arecibo Observatory. And just a few, maybe it was a week after we started talking about China's FAST telescope, a storm hit Puerto Rico and damaged the Arecibo Observatory. And I was like wondering, what's this really about? Like, is this like a Tower of Babel to these people with the spiral at the center that looks a lot like the spiral that you would see from the Tower of Babel? Let's see if I can pull up that picture of the Tower of Babel that I had for you guys, because there's something really weird going on. Here's the Tower of Babel, and in some of the descriptions of this tower and some of the apocryphal texts, you don't get these descriptions in the main text of the Bible. But I believe it may be the book of Jasher talks about the spiral of the Tower of Babel. And after everything that we've talked and learned about these spirals and what they might mean, we're starting to wonder if the Tower of Babel was not a portal to heaven. Now, what intrigues me about this is that when you think about the legitimacy of how God described this, and how there's the possibility that these people could in fact build a portal using the spiral technology, and that God had to destroy this, otherwise they would have succeeded. So now the plot thickens. Look, this almost looks like the 99 or the 66 that we always talk about. And you know, all these numbers of 66 surrounding Trump's name and his Tower of Babel, right? And these gates and portals that we've talked about that he was like he's basically associated with in movie lore and Back to the Future, right? And so now we have this number 66. We've got the spiraling Tower of Babel that God had to break down, confuse the nations, and scatter them all over the earth. So I think we have something here with what we've talked about here. So that begs the question, what would happen if you were standing at the center of this spiral? Let's make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this. And why is nobody allowed at this focal point of the observatory in China, the fast telescope? Almost nobody is allowed down here. And you have to wonder, does this have something to do with 5G whiz millimeter waves? Are they not only collecting data, but maybe they're bouncing it around? And will this radio telescope tie into the 5G whiz grid? You know, China is the leader in 5G whiz. I'm wondering if this somehow ties into it, right? Because here, look at this. They have these towers here. Now, these towers are supposed to hold up the focal point of this telescope, but maybe they're transmission towers. You just don't know. Like, maybe they're going to tap into the human soul, and through all these 5G whiz connected devices, collect them all into this focal point and then shoot a beam toward heaven to try to break through the firmament. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios in which this could happen. You know, this is interesting because this is a time lapse picture, and it shows the spiraling stars that we've covered on this channel as well, that around the north and south pole star, which I believe are just reflections of one another. I don't think one's in the south at all. I think we're in a giant mirror globe. Imagine standing in the center of a mirror globe, like one of those disco globes, and all the mirrors are pointing back at you. I believe that's the inner surface of the dome, the inner surface of the firmament. And really, all we're looking at is illusions and reflections as we're trapped in this matrix. But anyway, I went off track there. So you've got this star spin, and looking at both pole stars, this is what the stars do in time-lapse photography. They all rotate around a pole star. When you look at both of them together, you get the eyes of Molech amidst the Molech Way, the Milky Way, MLK, right? And that is the Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its tail. When you look up in the night sky, that is what the Milky Way looks like. Well established that that's what you're looking at. And so here, these people, this is who they worship. This is their God here. Nowhere in astronomy do they ever mention God and his son and you know, all of the things that we believe in. It's all about trying to transcend the stars, right? To get out of the firmament. That is their goal and their dream. And that's what makes all of this stuff so bizarre, right? So we got this spiral at the center. And to me, it appears as though they're trying to open up gates to heaven. This is what I think they're doing. So we talked about Babel and its spiral and how that relates into this. And days after we had discovered this Chinese telescope, its sister telescope in Puerto Rico, the Arecibo, got a gash in it from the hurricane. Now, before we get into the update on the Arecibo, because it has collapsed, we have to remember also the 007 decode that we did. You see how everything comes full circle when you're living in God's will? Remember this scene? This is the Arecibo telescope. And this is where things go off the rails, I like to say, because we weren't trying to predict anything, were we not? But yet, here in this decode that we did several months ago, even, I think this was even before the first gash in the Arecibo, here you have 006 at the top, 007 at the bottom. 006's name in the film is Janus. They actually name him Janus. And he has the golden eye, which is the space-based WAPON. And basically, he's going to try to destroy the world. And 007 has to stop him. And they are two golden keys, right? And remember, Janus wields a key in real life. That's his legend, is that he holds a key. And we showed you how Trump had his keys that he liked to give out before his presidency and to Netanyahu Remember that? So here's 006 and 007. And we showed you the Janus connection because his name is Janus. And this was filmed. Oh, let's get to the plot of this, because 006 tries to take out 007, but 006 ends up falling like lightning from heaven to the center of the Arecibo telescope. And it just happened in real life. The central unit that he's holding on to right here with your very eyes fell to the center of the telescope. Look at this. This is unbelievable. He falls. Now you'll have to look at that decode to see him falling. I show it because there's some crucifixion imagery. They show a cross. The helicopter, tail of the helicopter becomes the cross. See, it's all coming back to you guys. He falls. And here is the weird thing. Almost exactly 25 years to the day from when this film released, Arecibo telescope imploded just a few days after November 24th. About a week to the day, 25 years ago. Here it is here, some shots of what exactly happened. And before, I was suspicious of the gash and thought maybe this was some kind of judgment. And now I'm convinced. This is a modern day judgment on the towers of Babel, that they are trying once again to break through the firmament, seeking to change times and laws. And this should encourage you guys that there is a spiritual battle going on, that God is on our side, and you're going to see manifestations of this. Maybe God sent one of his angels in the winds to destroy this. So this is what happens when you leave God out of the equation and you rely on your left brain and science and you trust them and all of their endeavors. God will take them out. So I believe this probably was some kind of a judgment. So here it is. Here's the headlines. It's a huge loss. Let's play some of this video here. Now, up until this morning, they didn't even really have pictures of this. But now with the updated stories, we now have pictures of this. And of course, the scientists are weeping and wailing, gnashing of teeth, right? I mean, this is just so crazy. This telescope was so old. Now, one of you had discovered that somehow China was involved in this Arecibo telescope. I don't know if they helped to manage it or what. And I cannot find that article. If you do find that article about China's involvement in Arecibo, some group that is Chinese based, put it in the comments, and I'll either pin the comment or highlight it, because that's important, because that suggests that there's a connection between Arecibo and the FAST telescope, the eye to the sky in China. So they say it was already damaged, and some of the wires snapped, and then the reflector dish, or the structure, the 4-story structure, they call it a Gregorian dome. Wow. The receiver platform is what fell, just like in the movie A Golden Eye. Gotta wonder, right? The collapse stunned many scientists who had relied on it. What was recently the largest radio telescope in the world? Well, it wasn't. The FAST telescope is. It sounded like a rumble. I know exactly what it was, said Jonathan Friedman. Worked for 26 years as senior research. That's almost the same amount of time as since the GoldenEye film came out. See there, they like to put their little hints in here. Friedman ran up a small hill near his home and confirmed his suspicions. A cloud of dust hung in the air where the structure once stood, demolishing hopes held by some... See, they worship this stuff. Held by some scientists that the telescope could somehow be repaired. They probably demolished the thing. That's another scenario. They like to build and destroy, right? Happened at 7:56 a.m. on Tuesday. It wasn't a surprise because many of the wires and the thick cables holding the structure snapped over the weekend. Okay, so the wires actually snapped on the day that that this film came out. See how that works? They had to work that into the equation. So we really know that it really happened to exactly 25 years before. Said it was a snowball effect, and on and on. What other headlines do we have on this here? There's another one. Same story. They repeat the same story over and over. Here's some wide angle shots. Now, outside of these both being the same type of radio telescope, and the Chinese company that may have managed Arecibo, I couldn't find any other connections between the two telescopes. There may be other connection, but we did look at the GPS coordinates and some other things like that. Apparently, there's a big pharmaceutical company presence in Puerto Rico, and Trump was going to revive that deal. And I don't know how that might fit into CV. It may or may not, if they're one of the companies developing a VC. But there's something to this. All right, not all is as it seems when it comes to what they tell us in the news. A lot of this is visual, mind control, subliminal programming, and stuff like that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I'm going to go back into the chat, and we're going to do a little Q&A for the rest of the show. I was able to take a look at the film Tenet. I got through the whole film, boring film. And, you know, they get too technical with some of these films, and they're lost in their own minds when it comes to this stuff. And this film was very heavily laden with dialogue that most people would not understand. And it was just redundant dialogue. And so I did get through the film, but the most important thing, and I'll put together a montage for you guys, was that there are these copper, bullets, that travel back in time, confirming everything we talked about copper being a central theme to time travel. So we'll break that down. Tenet just released on September 3rd or August 26th in the UK. So we'll break this film down, put together a montage for you guys, and we may do a full live show. But that is pretty fascinating. We also have a couple other shows scheduled this week. I'm going to tell you a very interesting story about how when I was 12 years old, I saw giants. I literally saw, well, not literally, but I had this neurological, well, this is what they say it is. You know, we're going to break all that down tomorrow, but a neurological condition. It could have been caused by a VIRUS, and I had a condition called macropsia, which is literally Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where things in the room become very, very far away, and you feel very, very, very tiny, even though the object is right next to you. Like if you're looking at a light switch on a wall, all of a sudden you get this depth perception change. And this is very real, and we're going to go over that condition. And we're going to also relate that back into Numbers chapter 13, which talks about what I believe is a hint about the 12 tribes of Israel and how they saw giants in the land of Canaan. Now, all of that really happened, but it's a hint to what that might mean. This could have to do with bloodlines. I don't know. But we're going to get into that on tomorrow's show. Alice in Wonderland syndrome, macropsia. Now, some of you have experienced this. The onset of this happens right at puberty for most people who do experience this. And if you guys have experienced Alice in Wonderland syndrome, that'll be a good show to talk about, and just talk about why that happens and its onset occurring at puberty, and usually right around the time you begin to fall asleep, when you get a melatonin release in the brain, signaling sleep, is when I would have these episodes. And it happened to me pretty much all throughout my my middle school years, and then it stopped but it would come back here and there over the years, even into adulthood. I haven't had it in probably 10 years now, but they try to say, science says, oh, it's some kind of brain issue. It's because your brain has some kind of damage, or it could be caused by some kind of VIRUS. And I don't believe all that. I believe it's something deeper. It's a bloodline thing is what I think it is. So that'll be pretty interesting. And then another show we're going to cover this week is the God hour in your life and what that means. Because for God, one day is 1,000 years. And so we're going to look at what 1 hour is. And 1 hour for God actually fits into your lifespan at 41 and some change years, 42 years. We're going to talk about what that means. So when you turn 42 years old, and we've got it narrowed down to the exact date in your life that we can pull up. Many of you have experienced supernatural revelations. God maybe has touched you, or you've been able to get past things in your life. Some of you had a divorce or a child or a grandchild at that time, or lost a loved one and had some kind of spiritual connection to God. There's all kinds of different scenarios that we've shared together in covering the God hour of your life. So we're going to cover that as well. All right, let's do some enter the chat. All right, let's take a look here. Let's read some what Mark, use word is king. Hey Mark, good morning. We're further into this than most think, says Robert. I agree. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah, thanks, Gina. Yeah, tomorrow's show is going to be great. Thank you. Done your Reiki teaching to... Oh, someone's talking about Reiki. Yeah, you don't want to get into all that stuff, you guys. Any practice that deletes God from the equation, or Jesus, is probably not good. That's spiritual stuff. You know, you got to really stick to... There's only one way to the Father, and you got to go through Jesus. If you're not thinking about Jesus in anything you do, then you're in the wrong section. All right. Good morning. So just if you guys have questions, go ahead. Mark, we're going to clear this for today's show. Hit your shift key and make your questions in capitals so that I can see them, because the chat goes down, so it goes by so fast. I was an abused child, says Stephen, and had out-of-body experiences. Yeah, a lot of this stuff can come with trauma. Wow, Gina says this was a huge life-changing year. Yeah, well, we're going to narrow it down to the exact day from the day you were born, and it may fall on the exact day. I'm telling you, you guys, you're going to need your tissues for this one, because I was even in shock. My God hour related to well, I don't want to get too personal anymore. We're not going to get into my personal life, but just suffice to say, you guys will be touched by this. Now, I want you to also understand this is going to be public, so I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. But I'm not sure we should be sharing our birthdays online, and just for safety reasons and privacy reasons. But you can talk about your God hour and what happened in your life, but I wouldn't be sharing your birthday here in the chat, because there are people out there that will try to use that. All right. Okay, let me try to focus here, because I just jumped around a whole lot and that sounded a little bit confusing. Monday, England rolls out the VAXX, says Anthony. I'm praying for you guys in England and in Australia. You guys have been through a lot. Both of you guys are on islands, both ruled by the crown, and it's probably a scary time for you guys that you can't escape, because the flights are locked down. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. Australia has a very narrow strip of habitable land around the coasts, so you guys are kind of stuck there. You can't just escape to the interior, because you'll fry out there in the desert. And the people in England, you guys are pretty overpopulated, and I'm sure that they are restricting travel trying to get out of the cities going north. And so it's a very scary time for you guys. And they're also talking about mandating a lot of this stuff. And they're just waiting to drop the word. And you're going to have choices to make, very, very difficult choices about your future and your children's future. So I'm praying for you guys that God gives you the strength to get through all of this. Okay, so, what do you think about the demons trying to get the VA access fast track and approved to December 4th? Yeah, the December 14th date, that is, in fact, what is it? There's an eclipse on that date, and we've been talking about eclipses and how eclipses become the benchmarks, the dates of interest for these Apollo worshipers. They worship Apollo, Apollyon, Abaddon. The last time I checked, what a fitting end to Trump's presidency, right? The Apollyon eclipse marking the electoral college in their decision to either elect him and keep him elected or move on to Biden. Now, one of you mentioned that Biden, that means 2 teeth. What? Bi means 2. Den is like dentures. That means teeth. Dental, dentures. Biden means 2 teeth. The fangs of the serpent. The 2 shots that will be administered for the VACCINE. Do you see what's happening here? Everything is spiritually connected. So, very weird, right? So Brian has a fascination with his male parts. Come on, man. What grade are you in? 3rd grade? Keep it above the belt, man. Keep it above the belt. Oh, he's loving this attention. He's probably going to keep it going. Well, we'll give him a few more chances. I mean, look. If you want attention, you got your 2 seconds of fame. All right, let's keep going here. There'll be only one way out of this. It says Mark, Yeshua's word is king. You guys check out Mark's channel. Love Mark's work. We've been friends for 5 years now, I think. Mark's, for those of you that don't know, Mark was, he's been a subscriber for many, many years. And he offered his house for me to come house sit for him. Out in France, he had a couple houses that he just got given to him from his father who passed away shortly after I missed him. He's not like a rich guy or anything, but his dad gave him these houses, which kind of became a burden to Mark. But he needed some help, fixing these places up that were in disrepair. And so I went out and did that for a couple of years. It was a lot of fun. And he came out a couple times and several times, actually. And we worked on these houses, right? It's probably one of the most faith-building, enriching experiences that I've ever had with a best friend, Mark. So hopefully one day, if this all blows over, I'd love to go back out there and help him get those properties back up. They're probably overgrown at this point. He hasn't even been out there in a year or two. So that would be a lot of fun. Now, at that time, Mark had opened the properties up for anybody that wanted to come and stay for free, but no one really took us up on that. All you had to do is just pay the utilities and manage the properties. But that's Mark, in case you guys don't know, Yahuwah's word is king, and he does a lot of work on his channel, breaking down the ancient original language of the Bible. So this even predates everything. It's the original language of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it goes backwards from that to look at the deepest meanings of biblical passages and all of the Hebrew letters. And for those of you that like to get into the nitty-gritty of the Bible, or you have questions about certain passages and what their true, deeper meanings are, that's the channel for you. And his channel is linked on the front of my channel page. You look on the right and you'll see Yahuwah's word is king. So check out Mark's channel if you want to or can. We don't know the name of his channel. It's Yahuwah's word is king. He's the moderator with the wrench. You can either click there and Mark, pop your head up for a second there. You can either click on his name now and subscribe, or you can just go on the front of my channel page and subscribe. All right. Yahuwah's word is king, truth be told. Hopefully he'll pop his head up. He's got a wrench here. He's the moderator. All right. There he is. Boom. Yep. So Mark had already been talking about these snake fangs. Oh gosh, when was that, Mark? We were talking about that. You were talking about that because you were just decoding the letters, Hebrew letters, way back like 3 or 4 years ago, before I even knew what the crowned serpent was. Ooh, I got something for you guys. This is going to be cool. This is crazy. Okay, so one of you guys, a subscriber, sent me this. This is Crown Royal. Now we're going to have a little fun here. Everything they do, they turn upside down, right? See the snake fangs? See the serpent? There he is, right there. There are the eyes, and there are the fangs. Do you see this? Crowned serpent. Now we may do a video on the crowned serpent because we uncovered so much stuff about the crowning of the serpent and how all this happened under the Trump presidency. Remember in I Am Legend when Will Smith is chasing the deer and he goes and he's in the Shelby Mustang, right, which is the Cobra. See this crown, sir? This is another one. See the fangs of the serpent there? Unbelievable. The royal crown. Well, when Will Smith pulls in underneath, he pulls in underneath a crown. So the Cobra is crowned as he's chasing the deer through the cars. It's in the very opening scenes of I Am Legend. We also saw the crowned serpent, which is Quetzalcoatl. Q is also a crowned serpent in ancient Mesoamerica. We found so many crowned serpents. We found the crowned serpent in the Sandy Handy Sook. The school redesign. There is a crowned serpent. So, crazy stuff. They knew what was going on. Sforza, House Sforza, Visconti, their Italian banners and flags is a crowned serpent. Weird stuff. They relate all the way back to Dracula. So, spiritual revelations. Mark's channel is Yahuwah's Word is King. He's the guy with the wrench. Just click on that and you can just subscribe real quick, pop out of the show and subscribe to him, and then come on back. Yes, Marcy. Handy dandy sucker. We have to code everything. Many people have already forgotten about these events that have happened, but they all relate back to what's happening right now. All right, let's go back in the chat. Remember, capitalize your questions with the shift key so that I can see them, please. Q is related to Scorpio, germination, death, rebirth, seeds. Thanks, Allie. Thanks, Feminazi Slayer. Mark, I appreciate you modding today. Royal Crown Vatican wants to inject us all. Yes. That is absolutely true. I still see Trump staying, says J.K. Bell. It's possible. Wouldn't that be a shocker? Oh my gosh. All right. Thanks, David. Morning, Cheddar. There's Dr. Savage. Yeah, the Jesuits are behind all this. Absolutely, Dr. Savage. Is Dr. Savage still on the radio? Used to listen to him. He was the kind of one of the first people I started listening to that made me understand the right-left paradigm. I never ever pictured myself as a quote-unquote independent, and believe it or not, even being an independent is far different than being fully awake, because the independents even still believe in rulership and government. Once you're fully awake, you realize that all of them are different sides, but at least it's a step in the right direction. I would compare that to someone who believes in God and Jesus going to church. Well, church isn't a bad thing, but once you get past that, you understand that the church is not a building. That God, the Holy Spirit, can be opened up onto each individual person to find ultimate truths. Michael wants my email. It's caseybrown1973@gmail. Yeah, and so Krypton Game says no more school, SHOOTING. Now, that's true. They want us to look at the positives of the quarantines and the stay-at-home orders and all these things, right? And then they try to say, hey, well, at least there's no more school, SHOOTING. Now, think about this for a second. We took children out of school. We forced them to stay at home and separated from their friends. If any situation was going to cause instant turmoil, depression, and thoughts of harming oneself, wouldn't it be that scenario? But yet no one wants to talk about all of the SUICIDES that are probably happening in that age group right now because of what we've done to these children, which probably far exceeds the 100 or so children that were taken out in these school SHOOTINGS. Am I correct? If we really looked at that number of all these children at home and what's been happening to them, I almost guarantee you, it would far exceed the number of losses that we had according to these fake events that happened. And they know it. And if you really think about it logically, you know it too. When I was in Arkansas, one of the guys I talked to lost his son's friend. That's just one story. So, just because there are no more school events doesn't mean that lots more children aren't, hurting themselves. So, you always have to think deeper into these things instead of just accepting what they're telling us, right? And, I've heard people say things like, oh, now the air is so clear and now the water is so clean because people aren't going places and there's not a lot of trash and it's not crowded when you go places. And yeah, that sounds great. But is that really the way to handle a problem, by forcing people to lose their freedoms just so you can have a little bit more cleaner air? No, this sounds like a human problem to me. This sounds like a human problem to me. Like, why not take those resources and enforce when people are littering? I came out of the Tehachapi Mountains, was coming through Bakersfield, and I wanted to just cry. It looks like a garbage dump. For those of you that live in that area, you traveled through there, you understand when you go down up Highway 99 northbound, all there is garbage. It's like garbage piled up on the sides of the freeway. And I'm like, where is everybody to clean this up? Why are people just throwing stuff out the window like this? And why hasn't anyone done anything about this? So, it's not the same everywhere. And this is a human problem. Why do people do that is the question. I had a friend I used to go fishing with, and he would just throw his beer cans off to the side while we're fishing. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Oh, people, they like the cans. They'll come pick them up. They get money off of it. So I'm actually doing something good. I'm like, no, that's not good. So, it's not good. That's a human issue. Why is our government so focused on, all these other things when there's things hiding in plain sight that they could be handling? Why aren't the efforts the law enforcement efforts involved in chasing down the real criminals, or making sure that we all get to live in a good environment where there isn't a bunch of trash. Believe me, I would be on board with that. Start writing tickets to people who just throw trash in the streets if you see them doing it. But as we know, they would segue that into more control and power. So maybe that's not a good idea either. But don't give in to their mind control reasons and their solutions that they say have improved society because of what they're doing. That's just mind control. It's to make you give in and go, maybe this is better. But it's not better because you've lost your rights and they're telling you what to do. So I heard someone say this has brought families closer together. No, it hasn't, because there's a strong division between the people that believe this is real and the people that don't. And everyone's freaked out. Someone tests positive and they go, oh, that's because so-and-so wasn't wearing a mask. Or wipe down all the surfaces. Or this is real and you better believe it's real because people are suffering. So, be careful with that. This isn't bringing families closer together. It's dividing families perfectly between the people who believe germs are everywhere and are out to get them and the people that don't. The people that trust God and go, you know what? If Jesus was out among the sick and he commanded his disciples to be out among the sick, what the heck are we doing? We're hiding from what? Jesus didn't have hand sanitizer. Disciples didn't have hand sanitizer. When did we forget the Bible that we've been reading our whole lives? It's right there in the Bible, you guys. They had much, much more dangerous bugs back then, leprosy. They had boils and all kinds of crazy stuff they could have caught. But yet, what did Jesus say? Have faith. Go out amongst the people. Jesus didn't hide and quarantine and stay away from people and social distance. He did just the opposite. He put hands on them. But yet, Trump is supposed to be by God? That doesn't make any sense. He's doing antichrist practices by telling us and supporting all this. So, blame it on the Democrats, but at the end of the day, they're just as guilty as the Republicans. They're all acting the same way. They're saying different things, but they're acting the same way and buying into this lie. So, what else do we have here? That was a good question. I can't remember the original question, but right, exactly, Mark. Would Mashiach wear a mask? And he would not. He would not. No, we should not buy swords and machetes. Jesus wasn't talking about a physical sword. He was talking about a spiritual sword, because if he was talking about a physical sword, there would have been a precedent for the disciples using those swords, especially when faced with death. And they never did. They all died martyrs, crucified, just like Jesus, some of them upside down. They never fought, they never raised an army. He was talking about the word, the sword, not a real sword. You got to look at biblical context. I had someone email me, and they had good intentions, but they got all freaked out because they're like, there's a passage where it said that Jesus commanded his disciples to, take out a bunch of people with the sword. I go, dude, you got to look at the context. It wasn't Jesus talking. He was giving an allegory or parable, and he was talking about a king who did that, not himself. But he was so bothered by that, and he thought that the Mandela effect had changed the word. I go, no, just read the whole context. So I helped that brother. Hopefully that helped, so he can sleep at night now. But I'm going to share that with you guys. All right. All right, we're going to end the show today because we got a lot to cover the rest of the week. And again, I'm going to do the tenet decode. I'm going to work on that today. Get that up for you guys. A montage. It'll probably be a short montage. Then we'll cover it in full next week. Time travel and copper once again. All right, everybody. Be saved and take care. Love each and every one of you. Have a great day.